Good morning, friends. Let us try to understand Company Law Board, National Company Law Board, the transition, what will happen. Because tribunal, we have been hearing about it since 2002 when the Amendment Act came into force. The Companies Amendment Act, in the old act, it talked about tribunals, and that time we expected that the tribunals will get notified and will get constituted. But that didn't happen. The Madras Bar Association filed a case. It went to the Supreme Court. They challenged the constitutionality. Supreme Court says, yes, it is unconstitutional. The qualification criteria is incorrect. The constitution of NCLT is incorrect. Certain parts of the selection committee who selects the tribunal member, that constitution is incorrect. Fine. In 2010, this judgment came. Thereafter, again, the New Companies Act started, the process of incorporating a New Companies Act started. So in 2013, when the Act was finally constituted, again, tribunal as a body was an important component of the New Companies Act. We thought that at that time it would again start. However, the Madras Bar Association again intervened. They said that you haven't complied with the 2010 judgment of the Supreme Court, and this constitution of tribunal and this constitution of the selection committee is still unconstitutional. And they challenged several provisions. They said the tribunal should not, if there is an order which is passed by the tribunal and somebody does not obey that order, can the tribunal pass strictures against that person? They said that the tribunal should not be able to do it, the High Court should do it. This power is unconstitutional. Several such challenges to the constitutionality of the tribunal and related judgment and related provisions were made by the Madras Bar Association to the Supreme Court. After considering all the representations, the Supreme Court says essentially they have followed most of the provisions which we have said unconstitutional, they have rectified them. However, there are 2-3 provisions regarding qualifications, say a cost accountant cannot be a technical member, and few such criteria which they have not complied with. Another set was with respect to the selection committee. They said no, the selection committee is still unconstitutional. Judicial members should have an upper hand because tribunal is a quasi-judicial body. So who will be a part of the tribunal, which is a quasi-judicial authority, is primarily a decision which should not be left to the administrative arm of the government, but which should essentially be given to the judiciary. And that is why judiciary should have a veto. Judiciary should have a casting vote. That is what essentially is the essence of what you have been hearing about constitutionality and unconstitutionality of the tribunal. We have been hearing about it so many times, so I thought I will just briefly give you an update as to what happened from 2002 up till now. So let us see, why do we need tribunals? Under the new act, now chartered accountant is going to be a key person who is going to appear in the tribunal. He is also going to be a technical member who is going to assess the tribunal member and who is going to take decision regarding winding up and sick companies. So you should understand why exactly was the need felt for a tribunal. The basis for this was by the Iradi committee. Iradi committee is a committee which was formed by the government that said that look, the entire corporate scenario has changed. In 1956, the Act came into force, and thereafter several changes have taken place in the corporate segment. And so many things, so many corporate actions are getting stuck up at the High Court level, at the Company Law Board level, at the BIFR level. The company is not able to function. So what exactly should be done? So Iradi committee said that look, winding up abroad takes say few years. But in India, winding up takes 20 years. And so they said that you need to overhaul the entire law on these corporate actions. You need to create one forum. You need to create one forum which will deal with the winding up aspect, the merger aspect, the corporate restructuring aspect, if it is a sick company, everything, every civil action which can be taken by by a shareholder or by a stakeholder of the company with respect to the company, or by any statutory authority with respect to a company, entire civil action should be vested in one authority. And that was the reason why tribunal came about. They said that you need to constitute one authority, you need to give them power. Otherwise, how will you ensure that matters move fast? If you have a High Court doing one thing, if there is a company who is gone sick, the BIFR will come into picture, the High Court will come into picture, say certain members feel that the money has been siphoned out, operation mismanagement, company law board, how will you deal with it? And that is what used to happen. BIFR puts a stay, all litigation gets stayed. So all these things, considering all these things, the New Companies Act set up an entirely new infrastructure to deal with every case under the Companies Act. What did they say? Fine. Civil cases, everything give it to tribunal. Criminal cases also arise. Like if you see today, any operation mismanagement case, there is always a criminal case which is filed. So they say all criminal cases will go to special court. Create a specialized court for dealing with every offense under the Companies Act, because the regular criminal forum is not able to understand that why does just a misstatement in the prospectus make you liable for imprisonment. He has just made a wrong statement, but the implications of that will be understood by a specialized forum who has specialized knowledge of a subject and the implications of various corporate frauds. So that's why this mechanism. So police, they also said that look, police investigate, but they are regularly investigating frauds of criminal cases like murders. They may not have the specialized machinery necessary for investigating corporate frauds, and that is why corporate frauds need time to get investigated, and the entire deterrent effect of a law is lost. So they said we will have specialized investigating authority, and to deal with serious frauds, we will have SFIO, that is the Serious Fraud Investigation Office. So this is the enforcement mechanism, and in this context, it is the tribunal which has been dealing with civil cases. So what is the constitution of a tribunal? There is a National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, and there is Supreme Court. So tribunal will consist of a president, a judicial member, and few non-judicial members. The National Company Law Appellate Tribunal will consist of a chairman, judicial members, as well as non-judicial members. Currently, I will not go in detail with respect to the constitution of tribunal, because many aspects, as I said, of this constitution have been held to be unconstitutional. For instance, they say that this PCWA of 15 years, that is the cost accountant, will not be allowed. Then there are certain government officials who are allowed to be tribunal members under the new act. They said that this person whom you are trying to incorporate as a tribunal member, technical member, does not have the necessary skill sets to decide and sit in a position of a quasi-judicial authority. So many of these provisions, they say it is incorrect, but the provisions regarding chartered accountants are intact. There is no constitutional challenge to chartered accountants with 15 years of experience becoming technical members. So that is going to be there. Rest of the provisions may get rehauled.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We can have the queries allowed in the presentation?
Yeah, otherwise we can take it in the end, whatever suits you.
Just one thing about the background. Currently, in the existing Companies Act 1956, there were some of the approvals, etc., for which we were going to Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And for some approvals, we have to go to the court. So once this NCLT is there, then for everything we will be going to NCLT.
For quite a few things. What we can do is we can deal with it in the end, because it's not that the entire authority has gone to NCLT. Civil cases have gone to NCLT. Approvals, whichever was with High Court, is going to NCLT. That I have been covering. I will be covering in my lecture. What we can do is we will take it in the end, so that if the questions get resolved in the process, then we need not have them. Otherwise, in the end, we'll have a question and answer session where we will deal with all the questions. So, coming to your question, this is the answer. what exactly is this tribunal? Is it just a change in nomenclature, or it's a very important question. Is it just a change of nomenclature where CLB is re-christianed as NCLT? Or is it a different being altogether? Whatever practice you had in the High Court or whatever practice you had in the Company Law Board, is it the same practice that you're going to have in NCLT, or is it going to be a different entity with different powers? This is a very important aspect that all of us should understand, because when we are practicing in the National Company Law Tribunal, we may feel that we will adopt the same methodology. We may feel that we will adopt the same arguments that we make. For instance, in CLB, if you go with a very complicated question of fact, we immediately raise a objection and we say, no, this is a very complicated questions of law. The Company Law Board is a summary, considers only summary trials. So if there is a complicated question of law, please go to the civil court. Can this argument stand in front of NCLT? Even in High Court, we tell them that, look, certain dispensation kindly grant us. Nobody, as in case of small companies, if you have dealt with merger, nobody goes for shareholders meeting if you have got consent from everybody. Because High Court is an authority which is established by the Constitution of India. So they wield more power. So can those same powers continue in tribunals, or will the tribunal be constrained and will not be able to do such dispensations or have such leverage as the High Court has in cases like winding up, mergers, reductions? So those are the questions that will come. But essentially, the tribunal, there are several powers under the old Act which were enjoyed by several authorities. The High Court, the Company Law Board, the government, some powers of central government, investigation related, not much, and the BIFR. All of them will get combined in one authority, which is the tribunal. Now winding up. What I have done is, I have just tried to show which are the matters. Essentially, these are like the main heads. In High Court, these are the 5 main matters which are generally taken up by the High Court. Now all these matters will go to the tribunal. The changes and all we will discuss a little later, but essentially these are the 5 key areas which have been transferred from the High Court to the Company Law, to the tribunal. With respect to CLB, these are the matters. Most importantly, as in there are several powers which are there with CLB to call meetings, to decide on operation mismanagement cases, to invest the power to order investigation. But essentially the key areas in which most number of cases take place in CLB is 1, operation mismanagement, 2, refusal to transmit shares, and 3, compounding. All these powers will go to from CLB to tribunal. Some powers of CLB have gone to the central government. So those we are not discussing now. We will just discuss the powers which have gone from CLB to the tribunal. And BIFR. Sikh companies as such, the power to deal with respect to Sikh companies and determining sickness and all those powers, and to formulate schemes for revival and rehabilitation of Sikh companies, all these powers have gone to this. Now, is that it? The question is that it? Because in the old law, if you have seen, there were several frauds that we have noticed in the past. We have seen Satyam's case, we have seen several other corporate frauds, we have seen Sahara case. And that's why the question emerges that the old law, the powers which were given under the old law were somewhere insufficient to deal with the problems that were noticed. The corporate field is going much faster than the regular field and the law. So law also needs to be changed. So they said, let us increase the powers of tribunal manifold. So one of the very key new power which is granted to the tribunal is the power of class action. It's section 245 of the New Companies Act. If you read that section, you will see that everything under the Companies Act, if the company violates anything under the new act, if any stakeholder, any person who is involved in the company, whether it is a director, whether it is any person, whether it is even an expert or an advisor of the company, who has done anything wrong, can go to the tribunal and can seek compensation. Just Control F and check compensation under the old act and the new act. You will see that under the new act, they have allowed compensation for several things. So if you violate a law, even the investor can say that, look, because you violated the law, that's why I suffered a loss and that's why pay me compensation. What happened in Satyam's case? People went to the investors went to the Supreme Court, up till the Supreme Court, and they said, look, foreign investor have got a settlement. What about me? My share value, the value of my shares was say many hundred rupees. It has gone to 80 rupees and it has gone to 8 rupees. I am losing. I am a loser on account of a fraud which is perpetrated by the company, its directors and its people. So why should I suffer? But the answer was, the Supreme Court said that we don't have class action in India. So this was the reason why class action has come into being. It's just one section, but the kind of impact it is going to have on the industry is phenomenal. If used, this class action and the number of cases under class action are going to grow manyfold. Because you can challenge under operation mismanagement. Firstly, if you go, the court used to ask you that is it an oppressive act? First tell me, how is it oppressive to you as a shareholder? Please suggest whether this oppressive act has continued for a long time. You will say, my lord, there is a small, say, board meeting. A board meeting is invalidly held. This meeting ought not to have been held unless the procedure is followed. He said, what harm does it cause to you? So you had to everywhere show that there were oppressive acts, they were continuing oppressive acts, and they're oppressive to you as a shareholder. And so the threshold where you could go for an operation mismanagement case before the company law board was set a little higher. In class action, what they have done is, they have said no, the company has to follow all the norms. So if at any point it is found that the company is not following the norms, then the shareholders and the depositors have a right to intervene. And that is what the class action remedy is all about. Now this is another interesting, the second one, deregistration of a company is an interesting power which is given to government, to the tribunals. What is this power? It is not revival of defunct companies. That power is already there. That power was there with the High Court, now it is transferred to the tribunal. Deregistration is an interesting remedy. Because we have seen many companies used to incorporate several companies so that they could shift funds, they could have several layers of subsidiaries just to perpetrate a fraud. And that was found, that 7th layer of subsidiary there was a fraud. And these companies were incorporated only for getting over certain regulations or circumventing certain laws. So government has created a shortcut. They said that if you have incorporated a company and we find that this company is a sham company and it is incorporated with a fraudulent motive or incorrect information has been given for incorporating this company, any person, not just a shareholder, not just a creditor, any person can approach the tribunal, can make representation before the tribunal and can get a company deregistered. So there are two ways now of deregistering a company. One is to go removal of name of the company from the records of the registrar, where you go and follow the procedure, which is basically a striking off procedure. And another procedure is this, wherein if a company is found to be wrongly incorporated on the basis of false facts or with a fraudulent motive, you can deregister a company by approaching the tribunal. Another is, which is not so good, is removal of auditor and seeking compensation from the auditor. And this is where you will have to safeguard your members as people who will be representing. That will be the key role that you will play. That you have to safeguard yourself and your colleagues against this provision. Because the New Companies Act, rightly, wrongly, I have already been saying that this is too much to ask from an auditor. But the Company Act has a lot of strictures against auditor. They have seen one or two cases and changed the law substantially to the prejudice of all. And this is a provision which can be misused in case of auditors, against the auditors. The Companies Act says that if they say that the accounts are incorrect, and to certain extent the auditor has made a misstatement in the audit report, any person can go to the tribunal and ask for compensation because he relied on the audit report, and on the basis of that reliance he made certain investments or he made certain decisions, and he suffered a loss. So, on the basis of the audit report, if somebody takes certain decisions and those decisions go wrong because of certain wrong statements in the audit report, then any person, not just a shareholder, not just the creditor, but even say a bank who has given a loan on the basis of audited financial statement, can say that, look, the auditor did not mention this fact because of which I have suffered a prejudice, kindly ask him to compensate me. That provision is available in the Act. It's a very tricky provision. It has no upper limit. And compensation, if you ask any lawyer, is the most unpredictable of all remedies. As in, the compensation can go to any extent. You have seen that in cases, what is the loss? Say for instance, banker will say that I lost all the interest, I lost the principal. So is that the loss? How do you compute compensation? Compensation can be of any amount, and that depends on the nature. And if the company, say, is a large company, it's a 10,000 crore company, the compensation computation can run into any amount. That is what this provision, very tricky provision, but nevertheless, as of now, we do not know how it will be interpreted, and that is where the chartered accountants have to ensure that the tribunal members are able to appreciate this provision and to pass certain tests to use this provision. Otherwise, any person just to harass an auditor, that happens in operation mismanagement cases. In operation mismanagement cases, the people suggest, as in it is the advocates, I should say, they suggest that make the chartered accountant and company secretary a party. They say that in every case you will see they have a lot of problem. Internal auditor made a party, chartered accountant auditor made a party, the company secretary who has filled those forms and certified it is made a party. So they have been made a party in the past. So this provision can be an additional provision to harass the chartered accountants community, and over time they will have to represent before the tribunals at all times to see that certain tests are levied so that this provision is not misused. Then another two provisions are with respect to reopening and revision of accounts. Revision is where you feel that certain accounts have been done, but there are certain problems, there are certain incorrect statements that have inadvertently gone in the books of accounts. So you can go to the tribunal, you can ask them to revise the books of, you can ask their permission to revise the books of account. And another provision which is with respect to reopening. Now understand, reopening is another new remedy which is given by the Companies Act to the tribunals. What is reopening of accounts? Reopening means they will say that these accounts are incorrectly placed. These accounts are wrongly given. So you kindly reopen and redo the audit and provide it. That is what is reopening. They say that this accounts books are cooked up, they are incorrect. Who can apply for this? Any shareholder, any creditor, any statutory authority. Say for instance, income tax authority is behind the company. It can use this provision, it can go to the tribunal and it can say reopen the books of account because we find that these books of accounts are incorrectly placed. And this will have implications even on the auditors, because they have given the audit report based on which the audited financial accounts have been finalized. So this again is a remedy which can be sought by several authorities. You can use it if you are representing the client, but you can also be at the defense. You can also be defending such a case where you say that, look, this need not be reopened, and even if they are reopened, it is not the mistake of the auditor. These are some of the powers. Then with respect to deposits, already there are remedies under the old act where you can seek repayment. Under the new act also, the tribunal is empowered with all the provisions regarding repayment of deposits. The repayment of deposits can be of the old act as well as of the new act. So if a company fails to repay deposit with respect to the old act as well as with respect to the new act, both will be dealt with by the tribunal. And there are certain other provisions with respect to fast track mergers. That I'll explain when I come to mergers. Important question, isn't it? That we have seen mergers and amalgamations in the past. We have dealt with mergers and amalgamations in the past. So, is that the same power which is transferred to tribunal? Today we were approaching an advocate to go to the High Court. Today we will do it ourselves in the tribunal because we are allowed to appear in the tribunal. Is the power the same? Is the very key question which any person will ask. Or reduction of capital, is it the same thing? Just a change of authorities, forms more or less are the same, everything is the same, is it so? So let us see one or two powers, as in there is not enough time to deal with each and everything, but we will just have an overview with respect to these powers and what changes in the tribunal. Winding up, even if you see the provisions, the nature in which they have been written is not very different, but a very important change has been brought about. One is that technical members of the tribunal will also be involved in the winding up process. So the winding up and the technical aspects of winding up can be taken care in a better way. It is also found that in the official liquidator and the process of winding up in Bombay, it takes around 20 years to wind up companies. There are companies which are 20 years old, which are still in the process of winding up. And that is how the winding up process continues. But the tribunal, basically, there is one section which says that try to wind up all the cases within 3 months. Now, like try to. It doesn't say that you have to. It says try to expeditiously dispose cases. So winding up, unlikely that it is going to get resolved in 3 months, but at least it will get speeded. Why? Because now company liquidators can be appointed. You don't need intervention of an official liquidator. A company liquidator can also be a chartered accountant. So that is another area for you, and it's a very good area. So a company liquidator has most of the powers which were erstwhile given to an official liquidator. Say for instance, he has to prepare a statement of accounts. A chartered accountant is a better position to prepare statement of account than the official liquidator. They have to ensure that the company's assets are sold off, the liabilities are paid off. So these are the roles which were earlier with the official liquidator. There were several impediments in the functioning of an official liquidator, because of which these things took a lot of time, and that is the reason why the entire winding up process used to take an enormous amount of time, and company used to absolutely dislike going in for winding up because there would be no end. And it is also possible that these assets which today are valuable may not be valuable. Certain assets, not immovable properties in Bombay, they will definitely be much higher, but other properties. So this process has become streamlined. The chartered accountants can take up that entire process. They can appoint their own colleagues as a company liquidator, because that is a discretion of the company shareholders and creditors. So with their help, they themselves can take up that entire process of winding up. Only few cases where in the end the company is to be dissolved, where you have to go to the tribunal. Before that, official liquidator has few functions that they will have to finally say that there is no fraud, there is no problem and all that. Other than that, entire procedure can be taken care of by professionals. Then compromise and arrangements. Now mergers is far more difficult under the old act, under the new act, than it is under the old act. Mergers as a procedure is a little more complicated. It's a little more complicated, at least even procedure wise, and in reality, as in practice also, it will be a little more difficult than the old act. More or less, under the old act, what did we do? We did a due diligence. We decided, okay, we will merge the two companies. We go and file a company summons for direction in the High Court. The High Court gives a decision whether to hold creditors meeting and shareholders meeting. In certain cases, they get dispensation to hold the meeting. In many cases, other than listed companies, if you have a company which is small and medium, you used to get dispensation even from holding a creditors meeting. They used to say that, okay, give notices to all the creditors, or at least give notices if your company say has debts which are like say 1 crore. What you can do is, we see that most of the debtors, creditors are in the segment say of 10 to 15 lakh. The other small creditors who are 5-10,000 rupees, there are many. But those people will not be affected. So High Court itself used to take a decision that you send the notice. You need not hold meeting. You are dispensed with holding from a meeting. You can have, you can just send notices to creditors who say liability towards whom you are liable to pay more than 5 lakh. So that way, they used to say the small creditors you need not send. If a creditor is beyond 5 lakh, you send it to him. Alright, then you used to file a company summons for a company scheme petition, which is a petition where you go to the court and you say that kindly approve the scheme. The creditors, the shareholders have all consented and we have the necessary approvals. In this petition, there was an admission stage where you say, okay, you filed the petition, keep it. We admit this petition. Now go serve RD, ROC, OL, serve Income Tax Authority, come back to me with an OL report, with an RD report. Also give a notice, a paper notice, newspaper advertisement, ask if any other person has an objection. After you come back with this, the court finally approves your merger. This is the process. And then you take the order, file it in the ROC, and all those procedures are there. You go to the stamp office. This is the entire procedure. Most of the procedure is in the High Court, where you seek dispensation, and second where you seek approval of the scheme. Now what has happened, I will explain at every stage. The new act has said that no, you cannot ask for dispensation of the creditors meeting. So unless 90% in value of the creditors approve, you cannot dispense with the creditors meeting. That means 90% is a lot. If you are going to take approvals from 90%, you may as well hold a meeting, which requires only 75% approval. So basically, as such, a meeting will be a better route for holding. So in the new act, you will have to hold a creditors meeting, shareholders meeting. Whether you can seek dispensation, the act doesn't talk about it. The draft rules do say that in certain cases tribunal may grant dispensation. So using that powers, you can request the tribunal that, see, all the shareholders have consented, so kindly grant me a dispensation for holding a shareholders meeting. That is possible. Then the next stage. So you may not have to hold a shareholders meeting, but you will have to hold a creditors meeting. Next stage. Now, when the company scheme petition is admitted and you have to decide what documents are to be given, you have to understand that even for these meetings, you will have to give far greater disclosures. Has anybody done mergers before? Has anybody done mergers? Okay. In mergers, you need to give certain disclosures. Under the old act, there were very few disclosures that were required. In fact, many shareholders used to fight in the court for getting a valuation report. They used to say that, look, there is a valuation which is provided in the scheme. We do not agree with this valuation. Kindly disclose the valuation report. And that used to be a matter of objection in the High Court. There were, counsels appointed to ask the court to give a valuation report. Now, the company will have to disclose its valuation report. If there is a scheme with respect to creditors, a corporate debt restructuring scheme, you will have to disclose how are you protecting the secured creditors, how are you protecting your unsecured creditors. Several other disclosures are required. You will have to give an auditor's certificate that whatever technique you are following for accounting, that technique is in consonance with the accounting standards. Under the old scheme and under the old act, the disclosures were minimal. As in, you just had to disclose your latest unaudited balance sheet, and you had to disclose, say, the scheme and the board resolution. But under the new act, all these things will have to be disclosed and will be in the public domain. And the question is that there will be more people who will be objecting that why so, how did you do this and that. That is why. And valuation also, if you see under the old act, the valuation was done by chartered accountants. Nobody used to question these valuation reports in the past. But today, it is a registered valuer. Chartered accountant can also be a registered valuer. It is a registered valuer, as in the person who is designated as a registered valuer under the Act who can do this valuation. So this valuation will be done by all these people, and it will also be subject to questioning before the tribunal. So if the registered valuer does any numbering in any way, he tries to goof up the valuation, he will be subject to compensation in the tribunal. So registered valuer also have to be very careful while giving valuation report in mergers, because they will be subject matter of dispute in tribunals, and if it is seen that there is some number crunching done and the valuation has been incorrectly lowered or made higher, then there will be problems in the tribunal. So that's why enough care has to be taken, and these are some of the changes in the merger process. So the merger process has become more difficult, one, because certain dispensations cannot be taken from the court. Second, the number of notices which have been given are not just to the official liquidator RD, but far more number of authorities. They said any authority who is concerned with the company. So now, do we have to give a notice even to the labor commissioner? If it's a manufacturing company, they are unnecessary. So many other people will have a right to object to this scheme. And third, the disclosures and the right of the shareholders and creditors to get more information and to challenge. The only safeguard for the company is a shareholder holding less than 10% of shareholding cannot challenge, and a creditor also holding some less than 5% of the total number of debt cannot challenge. These are the changes. So similarly, reduction of capital, variation, certain things have changed. Alright? And that you will have to see on a case-to-case basis with respect to each matter, that how do they change. Even in case of CLB, the manner in which these cases will take up, the manner in which these cases will be dealt with by the tribunal will be materially different from what happened at the CLB. At CLB, there was no evidence taking, no regular evidence taking, there was no commissioner appointed to take evidence, there was no witnesses which were made to stand. They had that power, but they had a summary trial procedure. So many time company law board did not enter into matters which were a disputed question, a heavily disputed question of fact. But a tribunal is a different authority. If you see the draft rules, that is the NCLT rules, you will see admission denials, marking of documents. There are several processes which are generally a matter of suit. Like you file a petition, they file a reply, you file your answer to their reply, that is a rejoinder. Thereafter, a matter goes for trial. That is, you file admission denials. You say that these documents of the other party I admit, these documents of the other party I do not admit. Then there is marking of those documents. What does that mean? That you say, okay, these documents are admissible in evidence. Thereafter, you give an affidavit of evidence, wherein you say that, look, these other documents I can also prove by, you file a person's affidavit saying these documents are true and correct. Then there is a cross-examination of that person. There is a cross-examination of that person where he says that how this person is wrong. So all these things were essentially something which were a court thing. They were never there in the tribunals. As in company law board, they used to merely take documents from both sides and decide. This elaborate evidence taking and elaborate cross-examination never took place in CLB. But now the tribunal is empowered to a fullest extent. All the powers of civil court have been given to him, and he will have this power to go into evidence, to go into cross-examination, and then after looking at all the documents and after an elaborate trial, to take a decision on these cases. And that is how it is materially different. So there's one more question that is there, that see, in the High Court could, like in winding up matters and all, High Court could just generally command other authorities. Lower courts are under its jurisdiction. So if it gives an order, it is very easy for a chief judicial magistrate and other to execute that. Execution of orders is not a problem. Like if you pass an order, it will take place. As in nobody dares to not follow a High Court order. But in case of tribunals, there have been instances like in Company Law Board, there have been certain cases where people deliberately avoid complying with an order. So will that happen in an NCLT? Will that problems take place in NCLT is a very key question, because you do not take an order from a tribunal or a court just to keep it in your cabin and showcase it. You take an order so that you can take advantage of it. Today many people, when we deal with arbitrations, they take an order but it keeps on getting challenged. Once it comes, execution in the court itself is a very long process. So will that happen in case of a tribunal's order? If a tribunal gives an order, will that be executed? If he says some attachment, he says that this property of this person should not be allowed to be sold, there is a restraint on selling immovable properties, will that restraint be complied with? And if it is not complied with, what are your remedies? Because that deterrent effect of an order ought to be there. And that in case of tribunals will be there. One, because they have been given the right to punish a person, that is called contempt of court. That if there is an order by the tribunal, if you do not follow that order, the tribunal can pass strictures against you, they can pass penalties, and they can make imprisonment orders. In winding up, several properties need to be attached. There are certain properties where you need to physically go. So tribunals have been given the power to ask the magistrate, that is the criminal side, that is the Chief Judicial Magistrate, the lower courts, which is the Chief Judicial Magistrate, a district collector, they have been authorized, the tribunal has been authorized to direct them to do things that will help them in winding up. Say for instance, attachment, finding a property, all these things. Inquiry. They said that look, in operation mismanagement, in certain cases, the tribunal, say for instance, in reopening of accounts, there you cannot just pass an order for reopening. So there has to be some basis on which a tribunal passes a judgment. So they can suo moto or on application of any person make a inquiry. They can appoint chartered accountants, they can appoint any person to make that inquiry. That is again another area for you, because in operation mismanagement cases where there is a purported mismanagement, many times tribunal in Company Law Board also says a forensic audit should be conducted. So what is a forensic audit? It will be done by a chartered accountant or a firm of chartered accountants, and tribunal will start preparing a roster of such firms who can do forensic audit, and that is where you might have to represent to the tribunal that you as your firm are capable of doing forensic audit also. So that way, that again is an area which the order that tribunal can pass, and an area for a chartered accountant. Again, tribunals can appoint their own counsel. They can have special representatives who can suggest what should be done, what should not be done. So these special representatives also can be chartered accountants. There is no bar that a chartered accountant cannot be a special representative or an amicus curiae, just authorized by the tribunal to assist the tribunal in the process of taking decision with respect to all these matters that are given to them. And that these are just some of the powers that are there. These are the powers again which they have. I'm just going to give you this copy so you can just take a look at this. So that is what is the power of a tribunal. When the Satyam case took place, there was a case where Satyam was going to be merged with Tech Mahindra. Also, there were certain operation mismanagement cases which were filed against this company, Satyam. So, at that time, it was felt that CLB, the powers under 402 under the old Act were not enough to deal with frauds. So, the new Act has fortified the tribunal. It says you can take any decision you want with respect to operation mismanagement. You can remove a managing director, you can appoint a managing director, you can also look into the subsidiaries of the company, you can pass a cease desist order, you can freeze the assets of a company. In investigation, you can investigate into the affairs of other companies. So together, if you see the power of a tribunal, it is one of the most powerful bodies which is constituted under the Companies Act. And that area, together with all the allied areas, are open to you as chartered accountants. As I mentioned, as tribunal members, as investigators, as people who can do an inquiry, as people who can be appointed for taking certain, for helping the tribunal, so many areas open up as company liquidators. Not just appearing before tribunal, but several allied areas are going to be opened up to chartered accountants to practice in the company law. So today, just from a role as an auditor or as a role of internal auditor under the Companies Act, the role of a chartered accountant has expanded to all these areas which have opened up because of the new Companies Act. So that's it. This is the book that I am writing on NCLT and NCLT. I would request you, there is my email ID which is given. So if you have any important points which you feel should be inserted, or if you have any inputs, do write to me so that I will incorporate them in the new book. Thank you so much.
Now there's one question.